All right, today we're going to get into a really fascinating story. It's all about ambition, a bit of panic, and some seriously pragmatic thinking. We're going to look at how a company you probably know for its phones did something a trillion-dollar giant just couldn't pull off. This is the story of how Xiaomi built the car that Apple, well, only ever dreamed about.
Okay, let me start with a quick question for you. When you think of a tech company, one with that cult-like following, a whole ecosystem of gadgets that just work together perfectly, who comes to mind first?
If you're in the US, yeah, your brain probably jumped straight to Apple. But in China, there is another name that has that exact same kind of brand loyalty and ecosystem dominance, and that's Xiaomi. For millions of people there, Xiaomi isn't just like Apple, it is their Apple, their Tesla, and their Google, all rolled into one.
And that, right there, is the heart of our story. After a decade of rumors and billions of dollars spent, Apple finally gave up on its car project. Meanwhile, Xiaomi, they went from a simple announcement to full-on production in just 3 years. So how on earth did they do it?
To really get how they succeeded, you first have to understand what Xiaomi is, because trust me, it's so much more than just a phone company.
So yeah, of course they make smartphones and watches, but their whole world goes way, way deeper. We're talking electric scooters, air purifiers, robotic vacuums, and get this, even smart cat feeders and mattresses. I mean, what kind of tech company sells mattresses? One that literally wants to be in every single part of your life. That's who.
And a car, right? An EV, that was the logical final piece of the puzzle. The biggest piece to complete this whole human, car, and home ecosystem they're building. It just makes total sense strategically. But that's not actually the real reason they took this huge risk. The real reason was, well, a lot more desperate.
Yeah, this whole decision wasn't just about growing their product line. It was about pure, simple survival.
So back in 2021, US sanctions were hitting Chinese tech companies really hard, and Xiaomi's leadership was frankly panicking. A huge chunk of their money came from smartphones, and suddenly that entire business was threatened. The board basically asked their CEO, Lei Zhan, this one terrifying question. It wasn't about wanting to build a car anymore. It was about needing a completely new future for the company, and they needed it fast.
Deciding to build a car out of sheer panic is one thing, but actually doing it, that's a whole other ballgame. The jump in complexity is just staggering, and even the CEO, Lei Zhan, admitted he was really hesitant and knew almost nothing about making EVs.
And you can see why he was so hesitant. People love to say an EV is just a smartphone on wheels, but wow, is that a massive oversimplification? A smartphone has, around 2,000 components? A car has tens of thousands, with a supply chain that's infinitely more complicated. It's an absolutely monumental leap.
So, how'd they pull it off? Well, they were incredibly methodical. Step 1. If you don't have the know-how, you buy it. Xiaomi's headhunters went after the best of the best, poaching top executives from huge car makers like Geely and BMW with salary offers they just couldn't say no to. Second, they threw money at the problem. Over $1.6 billion invested in more than 100 companies that make car parts. And finally, they built their own factory. Total control from start to finish.
And this whole whirlwind plan brings us right back to that central question. Why did Xiaomi succeed when Apple's decade-long project failed? Well, the answer really comes down to two totally different ways of thinking.
See, Apple was aiming for a total moonshot. They wanted to completely change the game with a fully autonomous car that needed zero human help. It was a revolutionary idea, but in the end, it was just too far out of reach. Xiaomi, on the other hand, was way more grounded. Their goal wasn't to reinvent the wheel. It was to build a really, really good, competitive, and nicely designed EV that they could actually sell.
Instead of starting from scratch, they just learned from what was already working. You could even say they learned a little too well. Their first car, the SU7, looks an awful lot like the Porsche Taycan. Now, Xiaomi denies copying it, but it's pretty clear they studied the best designs out there. That line between learning and copycatting can get blurry. But hey, in this case, it was effective.
Plus, they had this one massive advantage that Apple just didn't have. For the past decade, the Chinese government has poured billions into creating the world's best EV supply chain. Everything from batteries to advanced LiDAR sensors is just there, ready to go. Xiaomi didn't have to build an entire ecosystem from the ground up. They just had to plug into the one that already existed.
So, the SU7 launched, demand was huge, and their prices were low enough to undercut rivals like Tesla's Model 3. They proved they could build a popular car at a crazy speed. But here's the thing. Building the car was just the first hurdle. Now comes the hard part. They have to survive.
And the scale of that challenge is just immense. China's EV market is the biggest and most brutal in the world, with something like 140 different manufacturers all fighting for a piece of the pie. Xiaomi's early sales are great, for sure, but they are just a drop in the bucket compared to giants like BYD and Tesla, who sell millions of cars. Right now, Xiaomi's a very small fish in a very, very big pond.
But their goals are anything but small. They've publicly said they want to become one of the top 5 car makers in the world in the next 15 to 20 years. And to do that, they can't just sell cars in China. They absolutely have to go global.
And this is the massive wall they're about to hit. Geopolitical tensions are rising, and trade barriers are going up everywhere. The U.S. has pretty much locked them out with a staggering 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, and now the EU and other places are starting to follow with their own restrictions. That road to global expansion is filled with political roadblocks.
So Xiaomi did the impossible. They built a fantastic car in record time and succeeded where Apple failed. But now they're facing brutal price wars at home, giant competitors, and rising trade walls abroad. Their biggest challenge is really just beginning, which leads me to a final question. Was building the car actually the easy part?